Brazos River used to flow into the town of Freeport, and the Corps of Engineers needed to block the river to make the channel, and so they rerouted the whole river so that the mouth of the river is now here. This is now where the Brazos River has its delta. The delta is the area where the river comes and then deposits sediment out in the ocean that it's been transported in the river down to here. So if we look at the sand here, it should be different than the sand at the old Brazos River. But that is not why we're here. We're here to look at this formation and the changes that happen at the mouth of the Brazos. If you look over time in historical pictures, you can see the images. These will be available for you to look at in this virtual field trip. But I came here. This is not a stop that normally gets done on the Galveston trip, and I wanted to come here to tell a story. This is a story about how serendipity sometimes favors what we call the prepared mind in science. My hobby is that I'm a pilot, and so I fly around Texas on weekends. Not every weekend because I'm busy grading papers, but anyway, one time I had to do a flight, and I had to take a long, slow flight, and so I decided just to do that, to come down to the Brazos. And when I came down the Brazos and came to the mouth here, I noticed that it was very different from when I had been there 3 months before. And what had happened was that this is the Brazos, it's the delta. You have sand on both sides. You have one side where sand is more being deposited and the other is being eroded away by the longshore current. But what I noticed was offshore here, all of a sudden there was a huge increase in sand, and there was a sandbar that was several acres in size. And so at that time I was teaching at Rice University. I knew that this sand had been transported down the river, and I knew that students there had been studying coastal deposits. So I went back and told one of the professors at Rice about this new bar. He'd never heard about it, he didn't know about it, but it was very fortunate in that he had a student who had been studying this river and had taken samples and knew the history. So all of a sudden I made a new thesis for the student, because he then got to document the growth of this brand new feature in the bar. It is a feature called a lunate bar. If you know any Latin, you have lunar eclipses, lunar sols. Luna is moon. And so this is a sandbar that was moon-shaped. It was crescent-shaped. And they only develop in deltas that have a lot of recent sand moving down. And the interesting thing is, this was after a major rain event, but it was about 2 years after the major rain and flooding event, because it took a while from the sand that was in the river to make its way, to be carried by the river all the way down to the mouth of the river. So they were not expecting this, and if I hadn't seen it and hadn't reported it, nobody would have known about this feature. And so they got to understand how it formed. And then through the years, the sandbar, you can see there's no sandbar out there now, it's just waves. You might notice that there are waves way offshore. That's because it is still shallow out there. Some of the sandbar is there, but it's under the water. When I discovered it, it was above water. I've been here for several years, and in that time we've had Hurricane Harvey and other storms, and so the beach is really changed from last time I was here. If you'll notice out here, it looks kind of trashy, but it's all grass. This grass used to be where the dunes were, but the storms removed the sand, and it's just remnants of the grass. If you look behind us now, you can see the sand dune and the grass. And so the storm has caused the beach to retreat at least 20 feet or 10 meters. So there's another feature in this area that we're just observing, in that this grass is mostly the roots of the grass that used to be on a sand dune. The dune would have been a couple feet taller, and this is then the remnants of the roots. And when the waves come in and go out, you can see what looks like a couple centimeter high cliff of dark sediment, and this dark sediment is very clay rich. And so this is the original sediment, and the grasses came, they preserved this clay, but what is in the dune is sand that's windblown and gets captured then. But what's on the bottom of the dunes and what's on most of this coast is this clay rich sediment.